All right, folks, what's going on? Good morning. How we doing today? Happy Monday morning, everybody. Coming into what is this? The second week. The second week of the new calendar year, right? All right, y'all. Put a one in the chat if y'all can hear me clearly. We're going to keep it tight this morning, but basically I wanted to run through a particular scenario, and this scenario kind of applies to most people, right? When I talk about recovery and the question of whether or not you are recovering, this is a very important thing to always keep in mind, and the reason why is because whatever your journey is in life, if your goal is to maximize health, your efforts do not really produce any positive benefit if you do not recover from the work, right? So are you recovering? That is the question. How do you know if you are recovering? And I'm going to pose a scenario to you. And this is going to pertain to your health and wellness journey, dropping body fat, building muscle mass, reversing any type of chronic health condition, right? Hormonal instability, things of this nature. If you have any of these goals, this is very important to always keep in mind. All right. So, are you recovering? Now, let's say coming into 2026, fresh new start to your calendar year. You've gone through your first week of the year. You're consistent with your resistance training. You're walking your 8 to 10,000 steps a day. You've been staying on track with your diet plan, right? Doing everything right or close to it. You may think this. Now, are you recovering? Well, this is a question you want to ask yourself early on as opposed to later. The reason why is because the way you feel in the morning, the way your body responds in the morning is a good gauge of your recovery. When you wake up in the morning, do you feel rested? Do you feel motivated to stay on the journey? How are your speech patterns? Do you have it's difficult to recall words? Maybe you're talking a little bit slower. Maybe you're doing a little bit more stammering or stuttering than usual. That mental cognition is one of the signs. Really pay attention to that. How sharp are you? What's your motivation like? When you ball up your fist, you make a tight fist. Do you feel like your grip is strong? That's another one. If your grip feels physically weak, this is a sign you're not really recovering so well. You may need some extra rest and recovery. There are certain metrics also. Blood sugar in the morning. If your blood sugar is like really high in the morning, this is a sign you're dealing with. Your body's pumping out a lot of cortisol, stress hormones. It's jacking up your blood sugar. If that's the case, this is usually an indicator that you're battling a lot of stress. Your body's having a bit of a difficult time recovering. That may not necessarily be the case, but it could, and it often is. Excessively elevated blood pressure in the morning. This could be another sign. That adrenal output causes vascular constriction, right? And that can drive your blood pressure up in the morning. Now, this isn't a thing where you take your blood pressure in the morning and it's high and you go, oh no, I have hypertension. Maybe, but maybe not. The reason why is because you start with vascular constriction that jumps your blood pressure up. And then that vascular constriction turns into vasodilation, because as you get that contraction, that strong contraction of your vascular system to produce that pressure, your body releases the nitric oxide and you get the dilation. Even when you eat caffeine will initially cause a constriction and then a dilation. Right? because of the role that adrenaline plays, the role that epinephrine and cortisol plays on your vascular constriction or dilation. But these are things to take note of. What's your appetite first thing in the morning? Right? You may wake up in the morning, you don't really have an appetite. But what you should have is, you may not have an appetite first thing in the morning, but you don't have the brain fog either. It's very important. You don't really have that brain fog. You wake up pretty ready to go. Right? That's important. Shouldn't be a drag. When it comes to resistance training, the reason why all of this is important is because people often will do way too much work. Right? You could be really ambitious. I want to drop weight. I want to build muscle mass. So you're doing like an hour of cardio, hour and a half of cardio every day. You're doing resistance training every day. You know, you're trying to do 6 days a week and all this type of stuff. You're trying to go hard. And understand that the more work you do, the more fatigue you accumulate, and this cuts into your ability to recover, which is why I'm talking about this now. This is a thing to get out in front of. Even if you're taking an aggressive fasting approach, understand fasting is also a stressor. All right? And so sometimes you may need to take a momentary break from your fasting strategy. So let's say you're doing alternate day fasting and you feel a little run down. It may be a good idea to have a refeed day. So let's say today's a fasting day and you just do not feel very well at all. You need to do something in order to get out of that, right? You don't want to be repeatedly just suffering through your fasting days and then having your training performance decline and having your mood decline and your sleep decline and these types of things, okay? Your fasting should not perpetually come at the expense of sleep quality. You don't want to trade one for the other, right? Now, with fasting, the hardest part is in the beginning. So in the beginning, you may need to suck it up, right? But this shouldn't persist and to the point where you're now 3 weeks in and the fasting is still just wrecking you. At that case, you may want to reassess how you're engaging in your fasting strategy. So if you're doing 3 fasting days a week, you may want to scale back to 2. You may want to scale back to 1 in order to recover, to improve your recovery, because that's the most important thing. All right. Men. And I got to talk about men's health a little bit more often, right? And the reason why is because men don't recover very well. Men have a high workload, but you don't recover from your workload very well as a man. Right? You'll have, like, women will recover like 20% faster than men do. So women can do a bit more work volume because they recover quicker. Of course, it comes at a bit of a higher price because of the negative effects that the higher workload has on progesterone levels in women, right? So for example, aggressive fasting isn't really a good idea for women in the same way it would be for men. You can do it, but the thing is that as a woman, understand that aggressive forms of fasting, if you're doing it perpetually and you're not handling it well, it can really crush your progesterone levels and create this hormone imbalance where your progesterone is just way too low. And that can spike up your cortisol, and cortisol can really increase imbalances between estrogen and progesterone, right? This is like the basis for a lot of issues. Let's say Hashimoto's, PCOS, endometriosis, things like this, right? So as a woman too, it kind of applies. For men, it's a bit of a different story because as a man, you could just drop dead of a heart attack out of nowhere. Chronic long-term health issues tend to be very long sustained in women, whereas in men, you just drop dead out of nowhere, right? So it's a little bit different. That's why heart attacks are the silent killer. Understand that as a man, cutting your carbs, poor sleep, aggressive resistance training, heavy lifting, these things can really crush your testosterone levels. All right. So that's why the recovery is so important. For me, I'm a big advocate of low volume, high intensity training. I'm a big fan of really high intensity training. You can really maximize the intensity of your training. However, the trade is you don't do it very often. Right? So when you do it very aggressively, you do it hard, but you don't do it very often. Right? This is why for women, the biggest difference when I recommend alternate day fasting, for men, 36-hour fasts are great. For women, it's going to be more so along the lines of like 24 hours at a time. I don't really recommend 36-hour fasts every other day for women like that. I generally do not recommend that for women per se. All right. The women who stand to benefit from that the most are the ones who are, fully through the menopausal stages. Because you don't really got to worry necessarily about crushing your progesterone levels in the way that you would before the menopausal stages. However, I err on the side of risk management, so I don't really recommend such an aggressive approach for women. However, for men, when you do the alternate day fasting, it's not really going to work so well if you're under eating on your eating days. All right. So if you do a 36-hour fast, you go to bed hungry, that's a very aggressive form of fasting. So basically, you have to eat aggressively the following day, right? You got to balance out the scales. You're not doing a fast as a means of achieving a caloric deficit. It's not the purpose of a fast. All right, it's to create a hormonal shift, and you're leveraging that hormonal shift as a means of adaptation to tap into more stored fat cells to make your body more energy efficient, reverse aging, so to speak. All right. But getting into recovery, right? Sleep quality. It's not just about how long you sleep, but it's when you go to sleep. All right. And the reason why is because at certain times of day, you're going to get certain hormonal cycling. So typically your cortisol levels spike in the morning to wake you up in the morning, but they decline throughout the day. Okay. Your cortisol levels are supposed to be at their lowest point at night before bed. But if you wait too long to go to sleep, cortisol levels peak back up and then you're up all night. And then it's very difficult to get to sleep the later you go to bed. This applies also to men and women. So it's just to be mindful. You don't want to get too stimulated at night because then you start getting that adrenal release and then that cuts into your sleep quality. You do that perpetually, this will destroy your testosterone levels. All right. This is going to be very important, this emphasis on recovery. And the reason why is because if you put an emphasis on recovery, you pretty much get everything you want. Let's take a little bit of a thought process about how we should view training and conduct ourselves with training. Building muscle. It's safe to say that all of us right now should be focusing on building muscle mass. At least retaining it. So this is where the high intensity training comes into play, and most of us are going to be doing this either 2 or 3 times a week for a collective of 60 to 90 minutes a week, right? And I'm going to get into supplementation and herbs and things like this to consider to maximize recovery. But as far as training is concerned, if you may feel, well, I don't sleep well, I'm always feeling tired. So how do I work out? This is another thing to consider. Let's say you get chronically elevated blood pressure, you're diabetic, your A1C is insanely high, fasted blood sugar is always insanely high, you got brain fog, all this kind of stuff. So you may say, I don't feel motivated, I don't really have the energy, so how am I going to get together and work out? At this point for you, you need an entry into exercise. Your entry into exercise is going to be something that's typically going to be very low effort. And the purpose of this is to establish a rhythm. Being sedentary is almost just as bad as overtraining. So you have overtraining on one end of the spectrum. Well, let's say you have overtraining on one end of the spectrum, and then you have a sedentary lifestyle on the other. Being sedentary is inflammatory, and it eats into your ability to recover. Overtraining does the same thing. You may say, well, how is that? Overtraining destroys your rhythm. Not training at all, or not exercising at all, or moving at all, destroys your body's rhythm. Rhythm implies some type of ebbs and flows. There's a level of volatility up and down. Everything in your body operates this way. Your vascular system, your lymphatic system, your lungs, everything. In, out, up, down, up, down, up, down. Everything operates this way. Your physical movement helps to create a rhythm that syncs everything together. Sun up, sun down. Lights on, lights off. Awake, sleep. There's these inversions of everything, right? Cortisol, insulin. Cortisol, insulin, right? So one of the best places to start is walking. You don't have to walk fast. You don't have to walk on an incline. You don't have to go on a treadmill. Just go outside and go for a walk, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes a day. This is an entry point into establishing a rhythm. And you gradually step up the efforts. This is the thing you have to do in order to recover. If you continue to just sit and not really do anything at all, this stagnates your body and throws off your rhythm. Your heart rhythm, the rhythm of your lymphatic system, everything. Even your hormones, because your hormones largely establish a rhythm. For every hormone in your body, there's a hormone that does the opposite. So you have this agonist-antagonist relationship, right? So a great example of this would be you have testosterone, and then you have insulin. And so, for example, if you eat carbohydrates, that triggers insulin. Insulin shuttles glucose to your cells, and this has positive effects as far as increasing testosterone. If you cut the carbohydrates and your blood sugar drops, you have a shortage of energy, this negatively impacts testosterone levels. Not to a significant degree, but it does have a negative impact on it if those conditions are sustained. If the lack of food intake is sustained, then what happens is your body responds with an increase in hormones like glucagon and cortisol and epinephrine, things like this. And that raises your blood sugar. And that's supposed to trigger some type of insulin response to drive the glucose into your cells. Right? However, there's supposed to be a rhythm that breaks the stress response. But if you're sedentary, there's nothing that really breaks the stress response. So you just end up with this really elevated blood sugar, this adrenal output. And when you sustain those conditions for far too long, then your testosterone really starts to take a massive hit. Because the stress is not being interrupted, because there's supposed to be ups and downs, but there's no down for the stress, it's just up. So you're just sitting there at your desk stressed. This is why you need an entry point. So you wake up first thing in the morning, you get dressed. Let's say you have some matcha ginger tea or some golden matcha tea, right? Put a drop of vanilla flavored liquid stevia in there. You drink that down, you get dressed, you go out for your walk. This sets the tone for the rest of your day because it establishes a rhythm. You wake up with the high blood sugar, you wake up with all the adrenal output, and then you go for a walk, and you allow your body to go in motion, starts to bring some of that blood sugar down, empty out your liver. You start to switch gears where now you have the right adequate flow of glucose into your cells. Then you got that matcha tea. You got the matcha combined with the ginger. So the matcha helps to regulate stress. So you get L-theanine from the tea that helps to bring down the cortisol levels and replace that with a different type of stimulus that has it's a more stable type of energy. It's not the jitters that you would get from like this excessive adrenal release. So you get the mental focus, but you don't get the crazy elevated cortisol and adrenaline. Right, so you get a replacement. And then you get the anti-inflammatory effects from the green tea. And anything that is anti-inflammatory improves insulin sensitivity. So this helps to sensitize your cells to glucose. This helps to bring your blood sugar down to healthy levels. If your blood sugar is just always elevated and it's not coming down, well, that's a congestion. The rhythm is off. Blood sugar is supposed to come up, it's supposed to come right back down. Go up, right back down. Avoiding blood sugar spikes is not really that important. The thing that's the most important is how long does it take your blood sugar to come down? That's the most important thing. This is what I mean about rhythm. Everything I'm talking about right now is about doing the necessary things to establish a rhythm. This is how CPR works. Chest compressions, breathing into the lungs, all that type of stuff is to establish a rhythm so that the person doesn't die, right? The whole body works this way. So you drink your tea, you go for your walk, and you come back. And then when you eat, your body's going to be a lot more susceptible towards taking up the nutrients from your food. Now you can get back, you can do some movement hygiene, some stretching, mobility stuff. You can even do that before the walk. That would probably be even better. You get into your body, you do your mobility exercise for your neck, your spine, your hips, your shoulders, this type of thing, whether it be yoga or whatever the case is, whatever modality you choose. You can, after that, do some 20 minutes of resistance training and then go for your walk. Or you can just go for the walk after the movement hygiene. You have your first meal, you fill up your body, good healthy resources, and then later on in the day, you do your resistance training, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case is. So that when you do your resistance training, you're not doing it from a low blood sugar standpoint. You have the glucose stored in your cells as glycogen from your first meal of the day, or all the stuff you've eaten beforehand, so you're not training on an empty stomach. You don't have to do it this way. I'm just talking about how you can establish a rhythm. Because some of us, we don't have a schedule where we can do the daily mobility and then do the resistance training and then go for the walk. We got jobs, we got schedules. Schedule's a little too tight. You can't really do all of those things consecutively, so you may need to split it up. If you are well fed in your training, this is going to be the thing that is the most conducive to muscle building. So if I'm trying to really maximize muscle growth, for me, I wouldn't really train on an empty stomach if my goal is to do that. But training on an empty stomach can be really beneficial if your primary goal is to improve insulin sensitivity and drop body fat optimally. Resistance training has a major influence on your adrenal glands, meaning you're going to get a peak in adrenaline release and cortisol and things like that. Because the training is a stressor in your body, and your body responds to that by making sure your blood sugar is high enough to supply your brain with glucose to sustain the effort. This is why when you start doing your exercise and things like that, you get warmed up, you get more mental alertness, you really get into the workouts. You get a pump, you feel your muscles, veins kind of bulging, filled with blood, the muscle engorges with blood and all this kind of stuff. This is your body responding to the stress that the exercise comes with. So if you wake up with those hormones already really elevated, well, then you can leverage that in your workouts. It's already there, you might as well use it, basically. So you can either use it for your walk, or you can use it for resistance training. But it's a good idea to use it. So like one of the bases is for being a human being is you have to work for your food. So you wake up in the morning and you're given this elevated cortisol and adrenaline in order to supply you with the ability to adequately engage in the work that you need to do in order to earn your food, so to speak. It's like natural human physiology. You don't necessarily have to follow that rule, but it is a good rule to follow, generally speaking, on average. Now, if you want to, let's say, drop cortisol, because cortisol is just has you peaking up here really high, and that sustained level of cortisol is why you'll have men with low testosterone. You'll have women with, let's say, low progesterone to the point where you're missing a menstrual cycle, things like this. This is actually very common among women who compete, let's say, in athletic endeavors to a really high degree. Olympic athletes, power lifters, bodybuilders. You have women who are trying to get super lean and striated, right, to get on stage and compete. You put your body through that, especially as a woman, I mean, you crush your hormonal balance big time. Your progesterone levels take a massive hit. And you can only do that for so many times. It has very negative health implications. This is one thing for women who are bodybuilders. It's really important to understand this. When you get really lean like that as a woman, a woman's body is really not meant to do that. There's some really, really detrimental consequences to doing that. It is rough on the human body big time. And I've had women come to me and like, you know, they competed in bodybuilding and things like this in their early 20s. And by the time they hit like 30, 32, even 27, they're like, I can't seem to drop the body fat. My body's not responding well. I don't feel good. I'm not getting a menstrual cycle anymore, right? This type of things. That's why. That progesterone is crushed, that cortisol and adrenaline is way too high. And eventually you end up with that adrenal burnout where everything collapses, right? So the carbs and the fruit, which I'm always advocating for, big time. Fruit is one of those things that can really drop your cortisol the quickest. You eat a bunch of watermelon, honeydew, cantaloupe, you eat a few mangoes, whatever the case is, and this beautiful, juicy, sweet fruit hits your palate and hits your gut. You get this insulin secretion, your blood sugar goes up, and that drives the cortisol down because insulin and cortisol, they have this inverse effect. Right? Sugar drops cortisol. One of the biggest reasons why fruit improves insulin sensitivity is because it regulates those adrenal hormones. The constant exposure to those adrenal hormones leads to insulin resistance. It's one of the things that drives insulin resistance. So like weight loss is one of these things where weight loss is very difficult for people to achieve is because this runs counter to stress management. Dropping body fat can be a stressor, especially if you're already stressed. Because you have to deprive your body of available energy enough for your body to tap into stored fat for energy. That drives up glucagon, and then that drives up cortisol, adrenal release, this type of thing. And when those conditions are maintained because you're trying to maximize weight loss, over time, this causes you to be more insulin resistant. This is the reason why the more weight you lose, it really starts to slow down and then stall out because your body becomes resistant to it. So the fruit helps to balance the scale because fruit is a stress relieving food. And y'all know what I'm talking about. If you sat down and you ate like 3 mangoes at a time and watch how your body calms down and relaxes. Some people, like when they're really stressed, when you're extremely stressed and you're just, right? You're just white knuckling life. You eat the mangoes and then you want to go take a nap. That feeling comes from the stress hormones just plummeting. And so now your body can actually come down and relax. This is different than fatigue. That's not what this is. Those mangoes are a sleep aid for a reason. That's why, like, if you eat a bunch of mangoes before bed at night, you sleep amazingly. Right? You eat a bunch of berries and kiwis and stuff before bed at night, you sleep amazing. This is especially the case with people who are just overly stressed. So when we talk about are you recovering, this is a thing you may want to consider. This has direct implications on your ability to sleep. If you're really stressed, it makes it very difficult to sleep. So when you eat all that fruit and you feel like you want to go take a nap, the fruit is giving your body the room and the space to calm down and go to sleep. So when you're like, when I eat a giant amount of fruit like that, it makes me sleepy. It's relaxing your body, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, isn't it spiking my blood sugar? Yeah, it's spiking your blood sugar. It's also spiking your insulin, which is driving down the stress hormones. Yeah. They have an inverse relationship with each other. As that insulin comes down, that glucose hits your bloodstream, yeah, that cortisol comes down. You bring down that excessive cortisol like that, you're not really going to feel like taking naps. So when we talk about for every action, there's an equal or greater reaction, it's kind of how that works. If your stress is really up here and you dump a bunch of mangoes or fruit in, that's going to significantly bring that stress down. It's like a sedative. But that sedative effect depends on where your stress levels currently are at. If your stress levels are not really that high and you eat a bunch of mangoes like that, it's not really going to have that same sedative effect. It's an auto-regulator. So if your stress levels are at a healthy level and you eat a bunch of mangoes like that, you may feel more alert. You may feel more energized. This is often the case. It's not going to have that same sedative effect because your cortisol levels, your stress levels are not as high. Right? So it's important to understand the effects here. Everything I'm talking about now are things that you should consider for stress management. So this is the thing I always talk about. You eat your straight fruits all throughout the day. Morning, early afternoon, late afternoon, and then early evening is more of a savory meal. This is where you get in the bulk of your fats and proteins and things like that. You don't need that much fat and protein. Because if you're dealing with a lot of stress in your life, just dumping a bunch of protein in your diet is not really going to be much of a benefit to you. Because of what you have to sacrifice in order to do so. Chronically elevated stress disrupts your gut health. And this is why. There's a time and place to have a higher protein diet, but under like extremely stressful conditions, not really. We have to view foods in terms of what actual foods are. And this is especially important for women as well. Men can tolerate, higher protein diets better because men typically have more stomach acid and digestive enzymes than women do. So when we talk about issues of frequent gas and bloating, this is a thing that mostly affects women. Women don't have as high levels of hydrochloric acid, and women tend to more frequently have gallbladder issues and the most likely to develop a fatty liver. All right. So as a woman, fruit all day, the one savory meal in the evening with your chickpeas and your pumpkin seed kernels and your hemp seeds, leafy greens and things like this. You'd have a chickpea curry stew or something like this. It's extremely beneficial, right? But you get your mangoes and your melon and your grapes and things like this throughout the day. It helps to bring them stress levels down. You bring them stress levels down. You have a healthier estrogen and progesterone level, and this is a big part of reversing the aging process. So when you got your chef Babettes, you got these women, often black women. They'd be like 60, 70 years old, looking like they're in their 40s, following that raw diet. Well, that's why that works that way. It's a diet that's geared towards stress management. So your stress management foods are your kiwis, your berries, your mangoes, your melons, avocados are some of your best fat sources, coconut yogurt, coconut water, an ounce of walnuts a day, Brazil nuts, things like this. These are some of the top foods to consider. You're trying to build muscle, one of the best foods that you can add into your diet are bananas. Bananas are a really good stress management food, especially if you're engaged in a lot of resistance training. So, for example, if you're doing resistance training 3 days a week, it could be a good idea that on your training days, you're really crushing the bananas. You don't have to do the bananas necessarily every day. You can. You don't have to, but you can. But it's especially important on the days that you train. In order to optimize muscle growth, it's not the protein that you need to max out, it's the glycogen storage in the muscle tissue. Glycogen meaning glucose that's stored inside the muscle tissue. The more adequately you fill your glycogen storage, the more growth hormone and testosterone you will be able to leverage in the process of building new muscle mass. And this is an absolute prerequisite in order to maintain the muscle mass you have. Now, aside from I talked a lot about adrenaline. I talked a lot about insulin, brain fog, mental clarity, sleep quality, that type of thing. And then we travel down lower. Gut health. Stress management. We can't talk about stress management without talking about gut health. Because if you're eating foods that are eroding your gut health, let me tell you something that makes it very difficult to sleep. To get really good quality sleep. You can even sleep for a long period of time and not sleep well. You can sleep for 10 straight hours and not sleep well. And it's very easy to do this habitually and not know what it is. I've been there. I've been through periods in my life dealing with major levels of deep felt depression. Going to bed real late. Couldn't get to bed at till 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 11 a.m. or something. 12 p.m. Go to bed at 2 and wake up at noon sometimes. Just be sleeping. And then wake up and still be tired and really unmotivated. I've been there. And this is a gut health thing. You clean up your diet is a major difference. And I'm so adamant about this because not only do I know about it from a scientific perspective and knowing how the hormones work, but I've experienced it myself. It's a dangerous trap to be in. And when you're so focused on protein, this is one of those traps. You can increase your protein all you want, but the thing is, if you're eating more protein than you can handle, this has very negative effects on your body because your gut can't handle it. So people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I'm trying to build muscle, drop body fat. I got on a plant-based diet, but I'm experiencing a lot of gas and bloating and stuff like that. What can I do? And oftentimes what you find out is, this is the person where they're trying to get a gram of protein per pound of body weight or something like this. Or, a gram of protein per kilogram of total body weight, right? And this is the issue that's causing a lot of gas and bloating and issues. they're trying too hard to hit this protein requirement, and it's coming at the expense of everything else. So for me, this is why I say 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean mass is enough. If you're getting all of this gas and bloating and all of this, it's probably because you're trying to get too much protein in your diet. Even if you're trying to gain weight, fruit all day, 1 savory meal with the bulk of your protein at night. But if you're trying to like eat beans all day, black beans and chickpeas and lentils all day, you're trying to crush getting as much protein from tofu as you can, drinking protein shakes, telling you right now, this is going to have massive negative effects on your gut health. You'll be dehydrated, your face will be puffy. Right. If you really want to maximize muscle growth and sleep quality and mental health and all of these types of things, you got to optimize for carbs. And your best bet is to start. You don't want to overload your gut, because if you're eating more than your gut can handle, it's going to have very negative effects. So you start calculating all of your macros according to your lean mass, and you gradually increase from there. Let me give you another scenario. You have a person who's very, very overweight. Not just overweight, but the way their body is storing it. So for example, let's say, you have a very large waistline. Well, you have a lot of body fat, but most of your body fat is in your torso. So around your waist, around your stomach. This is a gut health issue. You've been slamming way more than your body can handle. So your body's just parking it inside your fat cells. There's no way to release. For me, one of my biggest recommendations for people like this, you don't necessarily need to just do a calorie deficit kind of thing. I don't really advocate for that. Now, a good strategy for people like this to deploy is they cut all their fats out of their diet, and it's mainly just have like this carbohydrate, fruitarian diet. And it's just fruits all day and that's it. And they lose a ton of weight doing that. Then eventually the weight stops. They don't really lose any more weight. It just completely flatlines and not losing any more weight. If this is the case, your next step is to calculate your macros according to your lean mass and start including in healthy levels of fat and protein. You don't need that much protein. The fats actually could be more important than the protein itself. So this may be a diet where you're actually getting in more dietary carbs and fats than protein. That's fine. It may even be below 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean mass some days. That's fine. You don't need a whole lot of protein. Especially if you're trying to drop body fat, it's not really that important. Protein doesn't just build lean mass, it grows everything. It builds everything. Protein increases fat mass, muscle mass, the mass of cancer, cysts, polyps, fibroids, everything. It grows everything. All right? It's a thing to be mindful of. And if you have a lot of body fat retention around the torso, this maximizing for protein thing is not really going to give you the return on investment you're looking for. If you insist on maximizing protein, you have to do that at the expense of everything else. So you'd have to significantly cut your carbohydrates and fats in order to really focus on maximizing protein. That's the only way that really works. And then the issue with that is the fact that you run through this issue with the glucose deprivation and the stress hormone thing. Right? So your adrenal glands are just firing super hard all the time. This could destroy your sleep quality. You could be very deficient in key electrolytes. This could lead to high blood pressure, heart palpitations, anxiety, etc. So that's another issue that you would have to consider with that. So when I say calculating your macros according to your lean mass, what you would do ideally is you would take your height and you would say, for my current body, what is my ideal weight? Right? If you don't have that much muscle mass on you, let's say you're a man who is 5'9", a man who is 5'9" on average, your lean mass would be somewhere around 135 pounds, 140 pounds, 145 pounds, something like this. That's what your lean mass would be as a man who's 5'9". If you're not really that muscular, it'd be like somewhere around 130 pounds, something like this. People significantly overestimate their weight. So you would basically calculate all of your macros according to your lean mass, not your total body weight, especially if your body fat's really high. Because if your body fat's really high, and it's all wrapped around your torso, this is negative implications for your gut health. If you're a man with, let's say, skinny arms and legs, and all of your body fat is around your stomach and whatnot, chances are your body's producing massive levels of estrogen. There's a major level of aromatization of your testosterone levels. And you could potentially, likely, your liver, you got some fatty liver going on, right? And some gut health issues. And this is where it becomes more important to have more of like that raw fruitarian style diet, but also you're not over accumulating food because your body can't handle it. So you do your baseline of 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean mass. You start with a baseline of 4 to 5 grams of carbs per kilogram of lean mass. And then your fats are like a half a gram of fat to 1 gram of fat per kilogram of lean mass. You start there. As the body fat comes down, you increase your carbohydrate intake gradually. You don't really need to so much increase the protein and fats so much. You actually, if you increase your fats, likely you're increasing your protein intake also. Those two things increase simultaneously. But the focus is to increase your carbohydrate consumption because that's where you get all your energy from. And you need energy in order to really maximize your fat metabolism. So what that would look like is, let's say you start off with you're getting at least 300 grams of carbs a day, something like this. So you can have 2 meals with just straight fruit. And each meal is 100 grams of carbs with each meal. 104, 103, something like this. And it could be 2 meals. And then your final meals, you get another 100 grams of carbs, but it could be from things like, let's say, quinoa or kasha or basmati rice, black beans, lentils, things like this, potatoes. And then, protein, you can get a good amount of protein from things like tofu. You get it from legumes. You can throw some healthy fats in there like hemp seeds, pumpkin seed kernels, walnuts, things like this. All right, so an example would be something like 300 grams of carbs, 60 grams of protein, right, or 65 grams of protein, and let's say 45 grams of fat, something like this. 60 grams of fat, something like this. 60 grams of fat typically is enough for a man, right? If you're very insulin resistant, it may be a bit lower than that, 35, 45, something like this. Whatever your number fits, where you're like around in between 10 to 15% of your macros coming from fat. Right? So you take your ideal weight for your height. You calculate your macros according to the lean mass of that weight. That's really how you're supposed to do that. As a man, typically your ideal weight, even at your ideal weight, 10% of your total body weight would be body fat. All right? And it's good to establish that as a baseline. And then as you drop more body fat and you increase your training performance, you add in another fruit bowl with another 100 grams of carbs. And that sets you on the journey. And you can carry that out for the rest of the year, where you gradually increase your carbohydrate intake, where pretty much your carbs will cap out at like around, it really depends on the person, but your carbohydrates can cap out at like around 400 or 500 grams of carbs. Once you peak out at that like 400 or 500 grams of carbs or something, then you can start to increase your fats and proteins a bit more there. But you will cap out, and the reason why is because your appetite will kind of stall you out. It's very difficult to eat with so much carbs at a time because that's where you get most of like the water and the fiber from, which acts as like an appetite suppressant. When you follow this approach, essentially what happens is you give your gut a break. You give your gut foods that are easier to handle in the digestive process. And then you improve your gut health over time. And then as you improve it over time, you can add in more foods, you can add in more proteins, fats, and things like this because your gut can handle it. So this isn't just about like weight loss and calories in a vacuum. There's a lot of other things that are implicated in this process. And in order to maximize recovery, you need better gut health. Necessarily, you do. Supplementation can be beneficial. However, there really isn't much supplementation that is mandatory or required. It's not. People will say, well, what about supplementation with vitamin D? Well, vitamin D, it's a good idea to supplement with vitamin D if you live in an area or you live in a climate where you don't get much sun exposure. All right. That's mainly most important for us black folks. You actually get a lot of your sun exposure, and for most people who are not really melanated people, you can get a lot of healthy sun exposure just through your eyes alone. But for those of us who are heavily melanated, we need more sun exposure, and if we can't get that, the supplementation is your next best bet until the season changes, where you can shed yourself of the sweaters and coats and be able to get, you know, sun to skin contact, right? It's not mandatory, but it can be highly beneficial to do so. You can also get vitamin D from fortified foods. You can get it from mushrooms, things like that, right? People will say, well, what about B12? Most of your B12 is made inside your gut. B12 is a postbiotic. It's made by bacteria. It doesn't really come from food. The reason why you can get B12 from animal products is because of the B12 that is inside the flesh of the animal. But that B12 is made inside the guts of the animals themselves. All right. Same thing that happens in the human body. Interestingly enough, most people who are B12 deficient actually have a very animal-based diet. This isn't really a thing for plant-based people, right? B12 deficiency is not really that common amongst vegans. Most of vegans are more hyper-aware of it. It's very easy to get B12. You don't need a whole lot of it. My primary source of B12 as far as the diet is concerned is nutritional yeast. You can have nutritional yeast maybe like once a week and that's enough. Even people who are B12 deficient who get like a B12 injection or something like that, they only do it like very, very infrequently. It's not like a daily requirement. It's not really, you don't need that. All right, so a couple tablespoons of nutritional yeast in a meal, or, you know, a tablespoon of nutritional yeast sprinkled over a salad or something like this, is good enough. All right. Fortified milks, plant-based milks also contain some B12. It's very easy to get. And then, of course, most of it is made in your gut. Your overall balance of B12 it largely hinges on whether or not your gut is producing it. So you can actually go a really long period of time and not supplement with B12 at all. And your B12 levels will still be healthy because of your gut microbiome. So people make this big deal about B12, and it's largely a gut health thing. The people who are most likely to be B12 deficient are people with poor gut health. Don't get greedy. greed will destroy recovery. There's a lot of different supplements to take. There's a lot of different workouts to do. There's a lot of things you could be doing. Don't get greedy. Okay, so wrapping it up with supplementation, aside from vitamin D and B12, which are probably, like, if you were going to a supplement with anything, it would be those things. Vitamin D more so. If you're insulin resistant, it could be some really beneficial supplements. Magnesium, zinc, chromium. Beneficial, not essential, but highly beneficial. If you're more insulin sensitive, your body handles energy production better. So better thyroid function, better liver function, better mitochondrial function inside the cells of your lean body weight. Right? So better insulin sensitivity in the muscle, liver, brain, etc. Right? So chromium, magnesium, zinc. If you're on a more raw fruit-based diet where the protein is very low, it could be a good idea to supplement with zinc. You don't have to, but it could be a good idea to do so, because if you're just having a fruit-based diet and you cut all your fats out, you're not really getting much zinc in your diet, because zinc mostly comes from foods that are significant sources of fat and protein. All right. So zinc supplementation can be beneficial. If you decide to supplement with zinc, for me personally, the form with the highest level of absorption, so that you get the most out of it, is going to be zinc picolinate. If you decide to supplement with magnesium, it's going to be something like magnesium glycinate or magnesium malate or magnesium taurate or magnesium rionate, I think it's called. I typically default to magnesium glycinate. If you wanted to supplement with things like this, and then chromium would be chromium picolinate. If you wanted to supplement with these things, you run it for 12 weeks and then be that. And then let it, let's see how you feel after that. Reassess 12 weeks at a time. Creatine. Highly beneficial, not necessary. Creatine can improve insulin sensitivity of the brain, muscle tissue, better ATP production and thyroid production, which can lead to better levels of insulin sensitivity, muscle growth, and fat metabolism. There's a lot of benefits to creatine, very beneficial. Your body makes it on its own, but the more raw your diet is, you have less histidine, less methionine, less cysteine in your diet. And this can impede the synthesis of creatine inside your body. Your body already naturally produces it like 1 gram a day or something like this. People who are raw vegans or plant-based are hyper responders to creatine, especially if your diet is more low in protein. You'd be more of a hyper responder to creatine. People who already have like a high protein diet, you're not really going to be as responsive to creatine. All right. Not necessary, it's just beneficial. These things can improve recovery. However, you will reach a point where once you're fully capped out on these things, you're not really going to get much more benefit than that. It's not going to raise your levels to super physiological levels. So there is diminishing returns. So if you supplement with things like this, you typically only really need to do it for around 12, maybe 24 weeks, and that's it. Beyond that, there's not really going to be a whole lot of a benefit because you're already capped out as far as how much your body can store. Would I recommend iron supplementation for people who are anemic? Not really. And the reason why is because you can supplement with iron. It's very transient. You're better off increasing your dietary copper, vitamin C, and B vitamins, as well as getting more chlorophyll in your diet, which comes from your raw green foods. because those things maximize iron absorption from the food you're already eating. Anemic, this is typically because of a gut health issue, right? Iron in and of itself, supplementing with it in and of itself is not really going to work because you cannot increase hemoglobin without copper and vitamin C. Aggressive levels of weight loss can impede on your iron levels if you're not getting the necessary vitamin C, copper, omega-3 essential fatty acids, etc. So then this leads into omega-3 supplementation. You don't really need to supplement with it. It's very easy to get on a plant-based diet. Raw vegans on average get more omega-3 essential fatty acids than anybody else because omega-3 essential fatty acids are primarily plant-based. The origin of omega-3 essential fatty acids is plant-based. It does not come from animals. Most of the DHA you need, you get that from breastfeeding as a child. And then your body will convert some of the EPA that you consume from your foods into DHA. All right. DHA is made inside the bodies of mammals. When people are like, oh, should I supplement with DHA? Most people don't really need to, unless your body just doesn't produce it on its own, which you would need to be tested for something like that. If you have a major DHA deficiency, it could be a good idea to supplement with it. Some people with certain rare conditions, brain chemistry issues, it could be a good idea to supplement with DHA. But for most people, don't really need to. Like if you have like an adrenal insufficiency, it could be a good idea to supplement with DHA. But for most of us, hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and nuts, very, very rich source of omega-3. And then, of course, all of your fruits and vegetables and things like that already have omega-3 essential fatty acids in them anyway. So supplementation isn't really super necessary, but could be beneficial, depending on your circumstances. For sleep quality, supplementation for sleep quality. Well, zinc and magnesium paired together tend to be a sleep aid. There's a supplement called ZMA, zinc magnesium aspartate. It's basically zinc and magnesium combined, chelated with the amino acid, and then that basically serves as a sleep aid. But if you're getting enough zinc and magnesium from your diet, it isn't really necessary to supplement with. If you're insulin resistant, then that's when we're going back to the zinc magnesium supplementation at night. It can be beneficial. But magnesium glycinate is a sleep aid, and zinc picolinate together serve as a sleep aid. So if you have a difficulty sleeping, that would be a thing that you'd want to consider. Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a phenomenal sleep aid. Specifically, ashwagandha helps to improve deep sleep. Deep sleep is the type of sleep that you experience early on in your sleep cycle. It's like the first sleep cycle you go through. So you have these waves. You go deep sleep. You come back up, light sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep. It's like this kind of thing. You go through these phases back and forth between deep sleep, light, and REM sleep. So the ashwagandha really helps to maximize deep sleep. So this would be a good idea to get like an Oura Ring or a Fitbit or something like this. You go to bed with it on at night, and it gives you sleep data to determine what your sleep cycles look like. So if you're lacking deep sleep, where you're consistently not getting at least an hour of deep sleep per night, you may want to consider something like that. However, deep sleep largely is determined by when you go to sleep. The later you go to sleep you tend to get. So if you go to sleep earlier on, like around 9, 10 o'clock or something like this, that's where you can really maximize deep sleep. And you can get that ideal hour and a half of deep sleep. So what you're looking out for is around 4 hours of light sleep and an hour and a half of deep sleep and an hour and a half of REM sleep. All right. And that generally is a good night's rest right there. 5 hours of light sleep. So if you can get 5 hours of light sleep and an hour and a half of deep sleep and an hour and a half of REM sleep, that's phenomenal sleep. That's absolutely amazing. If you can get that consistently, you'll be on the right track. You'll be consistently building muscle, dropping body fat, and reversing any type of chronic health conditions you may have, generally speaking, if you sleep like that consistently. Maybe not 100%, but for the most part, yeah. At least that's like one of those things that will likely improve your outcomes unilaterally. So I'm going to get with y'all in the comments. Let's see what we got here. I want to share some of that with y'all. So are you recovering? If you're not recovering very well, these are all the things I just said here in this stream are things you want to consider. You said definitely feel a difference in eating mainly fruit. What's going on, Cali girl? That's right. My man, John Green. When I eat mainly fruit, I feel amazing throughout the day. When it's bedtime, I sleep like a baby. Yeah. That's right. Definitely have a busy day, so I walk whatever the remainder is of the 10,000 steps at the end of the day. Yeah, actually going for walks at night, like if you get your walking in at night, that helps to really bring your blood sugar down after that, like that last meal of the day. So that could be an effective weight loss strategy for sure. Juju, what's going on? Good morning. Good to see you in here. Carbonated Tarzan. I like that name. What's going on? That's right. My man Mark, what's going on? Good to see you in here. That's right. Proper recovery. Please stop saying right. That's one of my verbal tics right there. Right? That's one of my tells too. If I'm saying right after every sentence, I'm probably got a little. I may have not slept that well if I'm saying that a little too excessively. Hopefully it improved as we got deeper into the stream. I wake up, get it together a little bit more. Y'all let me know. Did it start to get better as we got deeper into the stream? Right. Instead of walking, can we jump rope? Yeah, definitely rope and jumping rope is a good alternative. Just understand jumping rope, you're not going to be jumping rope for like 45 minutes to an hour straight. You could, but I don't know if I'd recommend that. I think jumping 10 minutes a day is enough. How can I create a workout and diet plan with you? Yeah, definitely hit the link in the description of this video. And it is under services. All right, so that's the personal coaching. Matter of fact, what link did I put up? Let me look at this right quick. In the link, because I put links in the description of this video. So get personal coaching. That's the link. Folks, like the stream if you like the stream, by the way. All right. Best protein bars? Oh, I couldn't tell you. I don't eat protein bars. I don't remember the last time I've eaten a protein bar. I have very little incentive for eating protein bars. I'd rather eat a cup of cashews than a protein bar. I think that's a better alternative, generally speaking. All right, so I think that's a wrap, folks. I got through all my points. So this was the topic of the week, recovery. Are you recovering? Something to really think about. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Much love to you. Definitely join Matt. What's going on? Good to see you in here. That's right, my man Matt tuning in. Before let me do some housekeeping too, right quick, because I gotta do my plugs, right? Join the tribe community. We are going to be on for the community coaching call tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So you can hit the link in the description of this video to join the community. There is a free version of the community, and then there's a paid version of the community where you get access to my high raw vegan guides, diet plans, training plans, fasting guide, mindset and self-development video series, and you get access to the Thursday roundtable group coaching calls where we diet planning, training tutorials, mindset and self-development, and all that kind of stuff. Those calls are good. We go deep. All right. If you want to work with me for personal coaching, weekly calls, custom diet plan, training plans, things like that, hit the link in the description to get personal coaching. Folks is over here killing it. All right, I've been getting a lot of good news. Got folks dropping 20 pounds a month doing alternate day fasting because it is fasting season, right? Through January, February, March. So big shout out to everybody absolutely crushing it. And you can also book a call with me, right? So link is in the description to book a one-on-one call with me. All right. So links to all of that is in the description of this video. So for those of you who are in the Tribe by Noir community, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Everybody on YouTube, I'll see you next week, Monday morning, same time. And y'all enjoy the rest of your day.